Hi, Mystery Knox listeners. Welcome back to the podcast. On August 23rd, 1987, a 75-car, 6,000-ton Union Pacific freight train was traveling through the sleepy town of Alexander, Arkansas. Suddenly, the crew on board spotted a terrifying sight 300 feet before them. Two figures laid across the tracks. They were unmoving despite the oncoming train. The conductor, Stephen Shroyer, slammed on the emergency brake. The train groaned and squealed, the horn blazing. But this did nothing to rouse the figures. Unfortunately, by the time the train came screeching to a halt, it was too late. Little did the conductor know, but this tragedy would plunge a community into a decades-long nightmare, with unanswered questions, alleged corruption, and a persistent search for the truth. This is the case of Kevin Ives and Don Henry, also known as the Boys on the Tracks. To understand the shockwaves this discovery sent, you need to know who Kevin and Don were. Kevin Ives was 17, described by those who knew him as responsible and maybe a bit quieter than his best friend. He loved hunting, like many boys in the Arkansas countryside. He was a rising senior at Bryant High School. His mother, Linda, saw him as steady, someone you could count on. Don Henry was 16 and was often described as more outgoing, maybe a bit more adventurous. Also a student at Bryant High, he shared Kevin's love for the outdoors. They were inseparable, best friends since elementary school, navigating those final precious years of high school together. They were just typical teenagers, full of life, with futures stretching out before them. Bryant and nearby Alexander were small towns then, the kind of places where doors were often left unlocked, and the woods and railroad tracks were simply part of the extended backyard for local kids. They knew the tracks and fields well. They knew the schedules of the trains, the sounds, and the dangers.
You can just leave your house unlocked. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Different times. Yes, I know.
The night before they were found, Saturday, August 22nd, 1987, started like many others. Kevin and Don were out together. Reports suggested that they might have been doing some late-night spotlighting, which is using lights to spot deer. Quote, "It's believed Ives and Henry were using those items to headlight for deer. It's an illegal form of hunting where you temporarily blind the animal before shooting it. Friends say the two may have been drinking." End quote.
I will say, the shit people do just to kill animals.
Yeah.
I
was
understand.
just going to say, I never have felt the urge to kill an animal, so.
Yeah, no, same. I'm just like, I don't know. There's a different mindset, obviously, from us to them.
Yeah, definitely.
And we'll save the rest of that for another time.
They were seen around 12:30 a.m. at the Ranchette, a local grocery and gas station, talking with friends. Kevin reportedly told his girlfriend he'd be home around 2:30 a.m. They drove off into the night, presumably heading towards the wooded areas near the railroad tracks they knew so well. That was the last time anyone reported seeing them alive. Sometime between leaving the Ranchette and the train's arrival around 4:30 a.m., their night took a horrific, fatal turn. Once police arrived, the scene that greeted them was horrific. The bodies of Kevin Ives and Don Henry lay mangled, consistent with being struck by a massive freight train. An early, persistent, though sometimes debated detail involved a pale green plastic tarp, allegedly seen near or partially covering the boys before the train hit, suggesting they might have been lying there for some time. The spotlight and a .22 rifle that the boys had brought with them were found nearby. By now, a small group had started to form around the crime scene by residents that lived close to the train tracks. Word starts to spread about the tragic incident, and in the small-town fashion that Mary and I know well, it travels fast. At this point, the boys had still not been officially identified by police, so this actually turned out to be pretty helpful. If a parent or parents heard the news and knew their kids were missing, the police could possibly make a quick identification. First thoughts from law enforcement were that it was a tragic accident involving teenagers. Perhaps they were impaired and made a fatal mistake. The Saline County Sheriff's Office began processing the scene as an accident. But the police were not meticulous with setting up the crime scene. Key details were left out of reports, and evidence was missed. According to an article by Jason Roberts titled "The Murders of Kevin Ives and Don Henry," quote, "Evidence collection was haphazard. Critical items were overlooked, including one of Kevin Ives' feet, which remained on the tracks for days until a family member found it.
Gross.
Mm-hmm. Other key pieces of evidence, such as the green tarp and Don Henry's .22 rifle, a potential murder weapon, were never recovered, despite eyewitnesses' accounts and video footage confirming their presence. End quote. The day after the bodies were found, they were officially identified through dental records. The bodies were confirmed to be Kevin and Dawn. Their parents were devastated, of course, but one of the first questions swirling around their heads was, how did they end up on the tracks? Unfortunately, they never got a clear answer. The speculation of suicide came into play when the Arkansas State Medical Examiner, Dr. Fahmy Malak, I'm assuming that's how you say his name, performed the autopsies. Dr. Malak was a prominent figure, and he was the state's chief forensic pathologist. This guy, by the way, just fucking wait till you hear about him.
Yeah.
Yeah. His report noted the presence of THC metabolites in both boys' systems, indicating marijuana use. Kevin had levels suggesting use within a few hours of his death. Dawn's levels were lower, perhaps indicating earlier use. Based primarily on this, Dr. Malak rendered his official verdict: suicide. He concluded that Kevin and Dawn had smoked marijuana, and just FYI, Malak wasn't implying they both smoked a joint or two. He implied they smoked 20 joints before their deaths. That's a lot of weed, folks. That's a lot of weed.
I don't even think a person that smokes it would be smoking that much.
No. 20 joints?
No.
He continued to imply that because of all the supposed marijuana use, the boys became disoriented or lulled into a deep sleep, and tragically chose the railroad tracks as their resting place, oblivious to the approaching danger. Case closed.
I don't believe that.
Mm-mm. According to an article by Jason Roberts, quote, the investigation was further clouded by the autopsy conducted by Arkansas State Medical Examiner Fahmy Malak. Malak, however, had a long history of bizarre and questionable autopsy conclusions, but more on that later. End quote.
You know what this guy reminds me of? Someone that just, skirted by in school.
Absolutely.
That didn't really pay attention, do the work.
He sounds like someone who nowadays would, use AI to, pass a quiz or an exam.
Yeah.
Suffice it to say, Malak's official ruling stunned the families and many in the community. Well, no shit, man.
Mm-hmm. And I want to say, even though you're high, you have some sense not to sleep there.
It makes no sense. For the families, this explanation wasn't just improbable. It felt like an insult. Linda Ives remembers her reaction vividly. Quote, there was no way on God's green earth that those boys laid down on those tracks and went to sleep. Not our boys. They knew trains, they respected the danger, and marijuana doesn't make you suicidal or stupid enough to sleep on a railroad track. End quote.
See?
So pretty much what we were saying.
Yeah.
Dawn's parents, Curtis and Mary Henry, felt the same gut-wrenching disbelief. Why would two experienced outdoors kids pick active railroad tracks to fall asleep? What about the tarp? If they were just sleeping, who put it there? So the parents actually decided to get a second opinion on the pathology report. According to the Crime Junkie podcast, at first they set up a meeting with Dr. Malak in person. They tried to get some answers out of him, but he repeatedly dodged their questions. He apparently even kept trying to show them photos from the autopsy when they specifically stated they did not want to see them. Why would you do that? I will say, after doing research on this case and writing the outline and everything, I am so shocked that this doctor, if you even want to call him that, had a job. After all the stuff he did, after all the complaints, how was he still working?
I want to say it's who you know.
Mm-hmm. After that meeting is when they decided to go through with the second opinion. They did find a doctor that was willing to test the samples. However, surprise, surprise, Dr. Malak refused to give them any. Now, after a bit of back and forth with a court order and the parents talking to the DA about Dr. Malak, he apparently changed his mind and gave the parents the samples to send off. Yeah, okay. I'm holding my comments for now. According... or we'll be here all day.
Well, we'll get there in theory.
Yeah, okay. According to the Crime Junkie podcast, quote, when the results came back, Dr. Francisco said that he confirmed Dr. Malak's findings, and he found a significant amount of THC in the boy's urine, end quote. Even though the parents had had 2 different medical examiners agree with the findings about the THC, Linda was still wary about the results. She just had, let's call it, a parent's instinct. That gut feeling we sometimes get about our kids. Linda actually got a copy of the results and went through them all, line by line. According to her, only 1 sample of urine was sent to the lab where they received the second opinion, but there was no sample from Dawn. She ended up calling Dr. Francisco to confront him about this, and you guys, when I read his response, my mind was blown. Are you sitting down? He admitted to Linda that he never actually tested any of the samples they sent. He just agreed with Dr. Malak.
So he was paid to say that. I mean, that's a theory.
Why else would you not test them?
Well, yes.
Let me know if I'm wrong, but isn't that like fraud? Like, I mean, he could be sued for that, yeah? That just sounds like something you cannot do as a medical examiner, just make shit up.
Yeah, and also paper trail. Like, people, she's gonna go for another opinion. I mean, we don't know. We haven't got to that part of the story. But in general, when you can't get a good answer or you're not happy with the answer because you have that gut feeling, you want to go for another opinions.
Well, what I'm assuming, I could be wrong, but what I'm assuming is that these 2 doctors thought there's no way they're going to question both of us, right? Like, we're going to agree on the result and they're going to be like, oh, okay, like 2 doctors agreed, I guess that's what it is. And honestly, I do feel like a lot of people would have accepted it after the second result. But for whatever reason, Linda she had that gut feeling and she was like, no.
Well, she also, I want to say, from what I've read about her, she knows her son. And she knows that while he may do stuff, that's the excessive amounts of which they've reported was not her son.
Right.
That is not what, should be in the report.
Linda refused to accept that this was it, and she was pissed, obviously. Using that anger, she began a relentless campaign. She spoke to anyone who would listen, reporters, neighbors, local officials. She pointed out inconsistencies, the position of the bodies, the oddly clean condition of their feet despite the muddy area, the sheer unlikelihood of the scenario. She wasn't just grieving, she was fighting. Public meetings were held. The local newspaper, the Benton Courier, started asking tough questions. The community actually began to pay attention. Enter attorney Dan Harmon and prosecutor Richard Garrett. After hearing the parents' pleas, Harmon approached the Ives family with his friend, Deputy Prosecutor Richard Garrett. He wanted to help and told them that he and Garrett would stop at nothing to find those responsible for her son's murder. 5 months after the boys' deaths, and a press conference where up to 40 people were called to testify, the families were granted the right to exhume Kevin and Dawn's bodies for a second autopsy. This was a painful, traumatic decision, but they felt it was the only way to uncover the truth. They sought out an independent expert, flying in Dr. Joseph Burton, the highly respected chief medical examiner of Fulton County, Georgia. In early 1988, Dr. Burton conducted his examination. Dr. Burton's findings landed like a bombshell, shattering the official narrative. He confirmed the massive trauma from the train, but crucially, he found compelling evidence of pre-mortem injuries inflicted before the train impact. The EMTs stated they saw injuries on the boys that coincided with them being deceased before the train struck. Well, they also stated they saw Kevin and Dawn's blood at the scene, and it was dark. Quote, a medical report found by an EMT at the tracks that night noted that the boys' blood looked like it lacked oxygen, raising questions about whether Ives and Henry were already dead when the train hit them. End quote. On Kevin Ives, Dr. Burton identified a crushing-type injury to the face and skull, inflicted by a blow consistent, he suggested, with the butt of a rifle, perhaps the same rifle found near the scene. On Don Henry, Dr. Burton found something even more specific, a puncture wound in his upper back, corresponding to a tear in his shirt. It looked like a stab wound. Dr. Burton also contested Dr. Malak's interpretation of the marijuana levels, suggesting they weren't necessarily high enough to induce that kind of stupor Malak described. His conclusion was clear: homicide. Kevin and Don were assaulted, likely killed, and then their bodies were deliberately placed on the tracks in a staged accident scene. Dr. Burton stated unequivocally, quote, "These deaths were not accidental," end quote. The homicide ruling forced the hand of local authorities. A Saline County grand jury was convened in 1988, specifically tasked with reinvestigating the deaths. Over several weeks, they heard testimony from law enforcement, medical experts, including Dr. Burton, witnesses, and family members. Their final report was a turning point. It formally changed the manner of death on the boys' death certificates to probable homicide. But it went further. The report delivered a scathing critique of Dr. Malak's initial autopsy and conclusions, calling them unsubstantiated. It also heavily criticized the Saline County Sheriff's Office for its handling of the initial investigation, citing procedural errors and a failure to secure the crime scene properly. The report confirmed the parents' worst fears. Not only were their sons murdered, but the initial investigation was deeply flawed. In the fall of 1988, the hit show Unsolved Mysteries, and one of my favorite shows, ran a segment on the boys' story. JasonRobertsOnline.com states, quote, "According to a heavily redacted FBI file from a 1993 investigation, witnesses who called Garrett's tip line were threatened and told to remain silent. By the time Unsolved Mysteries aired, one witness, Keith Coney," which, by the way, I didn't say it earlier, but there's a story that the boys ran into Keith that night on his, was it motorcycle or something? Yeah.
Bike?
And yeah, something like that. So that's who that is. So one of the witnesses, Keith Coney, had already been killed. Within 6 months of the broadcast, 5 more witnesses were dead, all of whom had either spoken with Harmon and Garrett or were scheduled to testify before the grand jury. Among them was Keith McCaskill, who, shortly after meeting with Garrett, realized he had made a mistake. Convinced his life was in danger, he made funeral arrangements in advance. He was soon found stabbed 113 times. End quote.
That is crazy.
Very, very strange.
When that many people go missing or killed, doesn't that tell you something? Like, what are you trying to hide?
I mean, it tells me something.
Yeah.
Here's a little bit more information about the witnesses that have died or disappeared. So at least 5 witnesses died or disappeared between 1988 and 1990. Keith McCaskill was an informant for Dan Harmon and had taken aerial photographs of the crime scene. He was murdered in 1988, stabbed 113 times, 2 days after Sheriff Steed lost his re-election. Keith Coney was scheduled to testify before the grand jury in the case and died in a motorcycle accident in early January 1989. Greg Collins, who was also called to testify before the grand jury and was an acquaintance of Keith Cone, was killed by 3 shots from a shotgun on January 26, 1989. Daniel Booney Bearden was another witness, who disappeared without a trace in March 1989. And Jeffrey Edward, whose body was found in a landfill in April 1989, was also linked to the case. Then, in 1997, Harmon, who had represented the family, was convicted of racketeering, extortion, and drug possession. Quote, Leverett says in her book that his conviction and the resulting 11-year prison sentence handed down in 1998 proved, to the boys' parents at least, that their sons' deaths had occurred in an environment of local corruption. End quote. After the break, we'll discuss the many theories about what actually happened to Don and Kevin. Stay with us.
And back to the case. The deaths of Kevin Ives and Don Henry were ruled as 2 accidental deaths due to THC intoxication, even though some have speculated suicide. I think if you're an individual with no original thought, you'd agree with this. But anyone with common sense and a brain will know that there was something more. So I will say, though, there are many theories to this case. Yeah. Right? Like you came across some. But the main thing is what we will talk about here. And you can do your own research and find out. But this was like the main theory of why these boys were killed. The predominant theory is that Henry and Ives accidentally witnessed something related to the drug trafficking by Dan Harmon and were murdered. The bizarre autopsy findings, refusal to allocate funds to the investigation, and general dismissiveness of authorities is alleged to have been a drug trafficking cover-up which, of course, involved the government. 31 years after the crime, William Albert Haynes, otherwise known as Billy Jack Haynes to WWE fans, claimed to have witnessed their deaths on August 23rd, a double homicide. There is a taped confession that you can find online. He's noted in saying, quote, "I come with no hidden voice. I come to you straight face to face, because this is reality, man. I hide nothing." End quote. Now, at the time of his witnessing the murder of Don and Kevin, he transported and trafficked cocaine through the United States, which is how he eventually came to Arkansas. Quote, "I was also an enforcer who provided muscle to other parts of the criminal element to ensure that their illegal business dealings were collected upon. In August of 1987, I was contacted by an Arkansas criminal politician and was asked if I could provide muscle at an Arkansas drug transaction." End quote.
So, I have a question. Why did he wait 31 years to say something? Like, that's
I was wondering that too.
time.
And if you notice, like, everyone kind of waits a bit. Yeah. And I don't know if they're waiting out for, like, other people to fall off or whenever they feel safe, or I want to say too, it's like if they have family and friends that could be roped into this, you know, the whole "you can't say anything, we'll kill your family" and all that, you know, that sort of thing. Like, maybe it was that.
Well, I get that, but my thought is always like, you can send an anonymous letter or you can make an anonymous call. You don't have to report something as yourself. In other words, you know what I'm saying? If you're scared of that.
Also, it's like you have to also, like, where can you report this to where you wouldn't be found out? Mm-hmm. And, like, what part of government would be safe? Yeah. Saying you're reporting this. You know, true. Like, because there's corruption everywhere. Like, who do you trust? True.
And I'm assuming he did all this before he was well known in the WWE. I don't know because I don't know anything about that. I want to say yes. But yeah, that's what I'm assuming. So, yeah, okay. Anyway, that was my question.
Well, I will say, the minute Arkansas was brought into this and government, I kind of had a theory as to where this would be going. I didn't know anything more or less than that, but you know how one thing leads to another and, you know, leads to another and everyone is involved sort of thing. That's let me get to it first off. Let me get there. So who was this politician? In the near 6-minute video, he never says who this individual is, but alleges that this unnamed politician asked him to kill David Kennedy, the son of Robert F. Kennedy, in 1984. People have speculated it was Bill Clinton. And see, what gets me is politician and government, they're always so shady. Yep. And they will always be.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But I'm hoping, like, one day there'll be some sort of thing where it kind of turns around. I don't think that'll ever happen. I hope so. But anyway, that's like a whole can of soup.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story there.
Can of
worms.
Worms, yes. Soup. That soup sounds good. Okay. Some speculate Governor Bill Clinton was involved in protecting the medical examiner, who had a concerning number of illogical findings on his record. You know, that would kind of make sense, actually. That would. There is a 1994 conspiracy theory movie, The Clinton Chronicles, that blamed the cover-up of the murders on Bill Clinton, who was governor of Arkansas at the time and is, quote, alleged to have known about the drug trafficking in his state, end quote. I think in coming across this information, there might have been an audible "ah" on your part. First, politician. Second, Bill Clinton. Haynes goes on to say, quote, while conducting security for the drug money drop, I witnessed the murders of 2 young boys, Kevin Ives and Don Henry. They were murdered by other individuals who were working for the same criminal politician. Their bodies were placed on the railroad tracks to be mutilated by a passing train." End quote. Something similar happened years prior, which brings correlation to Ives and Henry. There was a claim that their case was similar to that of Barry Seal and the Mena Airport nearby in Polk County, but no direct link has been documented. See, now that is something people can look into, because that is like a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Kevin Ives and Don Henry is just a small portion, a small little, as to what happened.
The tip of the iceberg.
So the way this story kind of like expands is like, holy shit. Mm-hmm. Like, for us to talk about it here is just a little detail. But when you look into it, it's as you say,
the rabbit hole.
It keeps going. Yeah, it just keeps going. And it's just like, you want to know what happened to the boys, but then it's like, just wait, there's so much more, actually, that they got themselves wrapped
Corruption,
into. Accidentally,
drugs,
obviously.
Cover-ups.
Yeah, government. I mean, that's like the main three.
Yeah, like, have you noticed the cases we pick? They tend to, like, seem normal at the time of picking them. Simple open and shut cases, but no, they never are.
No, exactly. I was thinking about that earlier too, because I was like, we come across these things and it's like, like 2 kids get murdered on the train tracks. You know, it's just you don't think it goes into what it has.
No,
and it's just like a whole other thing,
that.
And it could get so overwhelming with information.
Yes, absolutely.
So you guys have to do your own research, because there's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But the gist is, it was a cover-up. While the deaths were classified as murder cases, no arrests have been made. Quote, "This tragic event would ignite an investigation fraught with obstruction, conspiracy, and murder. One that would ultimately reach the highest levels of the U.S. government." End quote. Jason Roberts Online. While many were fixated on the fact that the boys' deaths was an accident, the grand majority did not accept this ruling, and many sought to investigate on their own. Kevin Ives' mother, Linda Ives, worked on investigating this case privately until her death in June 2021. So what are your thoughts on this whole case? Like, what do you think? I know it's kind of been sprinkled throughout the whole conversation, but...
Yeah, I honestly, I do think that the main theory that we just talked about is what happened, unfortunately. I just think they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And, saw something they shouldn't have seen. And, it's unfortunate that, like, it's so easy for these people to just murder people and get away with it, And, it's sad, but I do think that's what happened. What about you?
No, same. I think exactly that. I mean, well, when at the beginning when it says that they were found on the train tracks, that is weird in itself. Like, who sits there, unless you're really out of it, and then they introduce they're smoking joints?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe that either. And then just with the autopsy reports, like, it was sketchy from the beginning. And
how they didn't even collect all the evidence. Like, his foot was left behind.
Yeah, that. And what is it? EMTs, paramedics, when they were there, they had seen stuff, they reported it, but some of that wasn't even included.
In the reports,
There was so much going on that it's like, it was not that. It wasn't.
It was covered up, and I feel like it wasn't even covered up that well, because when you dig into it like we did, like, it's pretty freaking obvious what happened.
And there's more information out there, too, other than what we've said. I mean, it's amazing the amount of... Like, this is lazy work, and the fact that people just blew over it.
They're like, oh.
Like, it's obvious as to what happened.
Think so.
Or at least we believe it is obvious as to what happened. And the fact that everyone's like, oh, no, that never happened. Or it didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
Really?
And I also feel like it's a cover-up as well, not just because of how the boys were, but also the medical examiner. Like,
that was a big red flag.
Yeah, like, how he acted, the lies that he told. Like, if there was no cover-up, there is no way that dude would have still had his job.
Although, nowadays, I kind of believe it, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, no, seriously. People have done worse and still kept their job.
That's sad.
So for it to be like back then, and it sucks that, you know, these two boys were involved in the way they were.
See, children, nothing good comes from being out past midnight. Just putting it out there. And I will tell my kids that too. Nothing good comes from being out past midnight.
It has been well over 3 decades since the boys have been murdered. While ideas and theories have been tossed around as to who was responsible for the deaths of Don and Kevin on August 23rd, 1987, no one has been arrested.
If anybody has information that could solve the case, definitely contact the FBI.
All right, Mystery Knox listeners, that's it for today's case. Thank you so much for joining us. We want to hear your thoughts on this episode, so let us know on our Instagram and Facebook at Mystery Knox Podcast, on Twitter at Mystery Knox Pod, or send us a voice message on anchor.fm/Mystery Knox Podcast. A list of our sources and photos from this case can be found on our blog at mysteryknoxpodcast.wordpress.com. If you'd like to help support this podcast, you can give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe to us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google, or wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll see you on our next episode, and remember, stay weird, stay curious.
He loved hunting like many boys in rural, God, that fucking word. Many boys in rural Arkansas.
What's another word?
I don't know.
In back country,
rural. Wait, am I saying it right? Rural.
Don't even. I can't.
Rural. Okay.
I can say deaths, but I can't say rural. Sounds like a car starting.
Like many. Oh. Okay.
In rural.
It's.
Stop. I can't. Good luck, Kim.
Oh, thanks. Okay. Like many boys in rural. It just sounds weird. But I think that's how you say it.
Like someone that doesn't have a speech impediment is making sure that you have one. Like, oh, you can't say this word, or you can. I don't know.
Rural.
What's another word? Do you want another word?
I kind of want another word.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
You can do that.
It's so bad.
No, it's... We struggle enough, Kim. We don't need a freaking word like...